Hello, and welcome to Message in the Middle with Marianne. We all know that life is hard, right? It's messy, it's unpredictable, but it can be wonderful all at the same time. My hope is that we can take a deep dive into self-development topics and explore life's lessons through book clubs, conversations, and interviews. And together, we can uncover the lessons that others have already learned to help us navigate this crazy, wonderful ride called life. Hello and welcome to Message in the Middle with Marianne, and today with my guest, Dr. LJ Johnson. Dr. Johnson is a certified women's health and nutrition coach who focuses on nutrition and healthy habits that improve the quality of life in general, but more specifically for those suffering from diseases that are caused by a hormonal imbalance. Dr. Johnson is also the podcast host of her own podcast called Wholistic Endo Expert. Dr. Johnson, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited per usual and just ready to serve your audience. What can I say? I'm ready. I'm down for it all right now.
Well, we're ready too. And to frame it up, I'll just say that we chatted a while ago and did our normal discovery call. And I was thinking this would be a good episode for the beginning of the year because I don't know if it's unfortunate or fortunately, but people tend to pay more attention of their health and kind of take stock of everything around them and their situation in January. So I thought this would be a good time to introduce you. So before we dig into some, I'll call them hard questions, can you sort of give us the background on what led you into this work and being so passionate about it? Because you guys are going to hear she's so passionate about this work.
Well, let me tell you, that passion, honey, it came from some trials and some tribulations. I am passionate and on the other side of the mountain now. But what really shifted my entire world and my business, I have to be very honest and transparent, my own healing journey. It took me 16 years to get properly diagnosed with endometriosis. So trying to run a business, a single mother, do all these amazing things and have this failing health, it was not working for me.
Yeah, that's hard. And I will say most people end up in their space, their calling by going through some things, right? It's all that experience that we bring with us. So it's not surprising to me that that's what led you here. Unfortunate for you, but not surprising to me.
It's true, right? That turning that pain into our passion, I think it works in so many different ways. For me, I was always huge on health and wellness and mental health. But once I got the diagnosis, I healed myself naturally. It shifted my entire practice because it really opened my eyes to so many people who were suffering in silence, that were, in debilitating chronic pelvic pain, that were having menstrual health issues, that had this chronic illness that was invisible and didn't really have the tools to put in their toolbox to get quality of life.
So that was a really good segue to my first question, which was just to start at the basics and talk to us a little bit about some of the classic diseases, chronic illnesses that sort of fall into this bucket of being caused or exacerbated by hormonal imbalance? Because I'm not sure we all know that.
That is such a good question. And I think for some people, when they think hormonal imbalances, especially for women, we suddenly are like, oh, if you have a hormone issue, just get some birth control, right? Because that's just what, social media and our doctors, as soon as you say period pain or pelvic pain or anything to do with bleeding, they're like, aha, I've got the pill for you, honey, right? There's the pill, there's the patch, there's, all of these things. So here's the thing. Hormonal imbalance is a huge shift with your metabolism. It's a huge shift as far as metabolic chaos. So the way that I like to explain it is everything in your body is connected. And you're like, yeah, LJ, I know that, but think about it. When I say your head is connected to your body, you're like, okay, great, doctor. We already knew that. But this is the thing. If we know that the head is connected to the body, then why do we try to silo health issues, right? When you, for example, have that horrible acne, not that cute acne you can rub some Curology on. I'm talking about that cystic acne that's painful. There's like no pimple patch that's working. You're doing all the creams, the pills, potions, and the lotion. The acne's like kicking your butt. That is something where we don't think about gut health. We don't think about hormones. We're just like, get to the dermatologist, fix this acne. I got to take a picture in 2 weeks, right? We're like, give me the solution, give me the Band-Aid. But when you start really looking at your health as a connected tissue, right? Everything is meshed together. Your hormones affect everything. Now, yes, gut health is important, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But if you are in hormonal imbalances, you're going to have tons of symptoms. I'm just going to kind of go head to toe. There can be acne. There can be brain fog. There can be a lot of mental clarity issues. Maybe you have really bad memory, asthma, allergies, joint pain, weight gain. Now I know weight gain at the beginning of the year, everyone's like, okay, now I'm listening. They're like, finally, she's telling me something to help me lose the 15 pounds. And I'm like, here, honey, let me tell you, baby girl, the 15 pounds, number one, it is not the problem. Yes, you may need to shed some weight. Yes, you may be inflamed, but at the end of the day, if you're able to get your gut health and balance your hormones, the weight loss will come. The clear skin will come. The energy will come. Not having those murder scene periods. And if you've got fibroids or endometriosis, you know what it's like to have those periods where you're like, oh my God, what is going on? You're anemic, you're fatigued, you're lightheaded, you're passing out, all of these things. Once you get your gut health and your hormones, and I really want to tie those two together, once you get those really married, remembering that your head is connected to your body, that is when you can really have those healing wins. But a lot of the times when you're having hormonal issues, there's going to be the pelvic pain, the period pain, the joint pain. There are people that are like, oh, I just get these crazy headaches around my cycle, and they never really tie it to a hormonal imbalance. And so there's so many different ways to look at it, and not just your sex hormones, right? Because yes, you have your estrogen, testosterone, etc. But when we're talking about hormonal imbalances, we're also talking about thyroid. And let's be honest, so many people have a thyroid issue, even myself, still working on my thyroid healing naturally, that sluggish thyroid. And so we really have to take all of that in and really just find the root cause. I think the biggest thing, as I get hyped up about this topic, the biggest thing is we chase the symptoms. We don't really want to get to the root of the problem because that will take a little time, right? If you're gassy, you just want to supplement for that. If you've got acne, you just want the dermatologist to make it all better. If you're gaining weight, you're just like, what can I do? Let me restrict calories, let me over exercise. But if you really, really, really slow down, work with someone to get to the root of the problem, I promise you, I'm screaming from the top of the mountains, I promise you, if you get to the root of the problem, everything else will fall into line.
So a couple of things out of that as follow-up. Some of those symptoms, I think, could be caused by several things, probably many things. So one of my first thoughts is, so how can every woman, any woman, have their hormones tested fully so they can have all the information? Because I know that not every doctor supports that. Not every doctor will send you for the right tests. How can you advocate for that? What do you ask for? Can you do it yourself? Give me some thoughts on that.
I love it. Test rather than guess. So many times I've been there, right? You got symptoms and you're up on Dr. Google and Pinterest trying to figure it all out. But I'm here to tell you, testing rather than guessing. Now, what I will say before I give that answer is there's conventional medicine where you're just managing disease. And then there's functional medicine where I want you functioning, not just at 100%, but 110%. I want you to truly be living your best life where you're not having to manage dis-ease and symptoms all of the time. Now, in conventional medicine, if you go to your OB-GYN, your PCP, your regular doctor with Blue Cross and Blue Shield or whoever, they're going to test your hormones via blood. They're going to do the test. They're not going to test on the right day. They're not looking at your cycle mapping or any of that. It's just like, hey, you're here on a Tuesday. Go do your blood draw. It's going to come back. We've all been there where they're like, you're fine. I've heard it before too. LJ, you're fine. I don't know what's going on. I'm like, are you sure? I can't keep my eyes open. I'm gaining weight. I'm stressed out. I'm constipated. Well, you know what? Your blood work looks fine today on a Tuesday. So I'm like, oh, okay, maybe it's all in my head, right? Then there's functional medicine where, okay, yes, the blood work will give you that little snippet in time. But for testing the hormones, I love to use the Dutch test. And just like it says, DUTCH, the Dutch test, which is dried urine. That dried urine is not just a snippet in time on that Tuesday, but number one, we test that dried urine on a certain day so that we can test the estrogen, the progesterone, not just test the actual hormones, but actually grab the metabolites. The metabolites, this is what I want to scream again. The metabolites are where the money's at. The metabolites will tell me what your hormone levels are, but actually how your body is metabolizing them. What good does it do if you have all these hormones or you don't have enough if your body's not able to utilize them, metabolize them, and put them to work? It's kind of like the vitamin that sits on your counter. It's not going to do you any good till you get it inside of your body. So the same thing with the blood test. That little snippet in time, it could be a little helpful for some things, depending on what you're looking at. But when you really want to know what's going on with the hormones, you need the metabolites. You also need the Dutch test because it tells me where those metabolites are going. Are they going down a pathway that could cause cancer? Is that in your family? Could it cause proliferative tissue? Is it clogging up in your liver? Once again, detoxifying your liver. Your liver is your master detoxifier. It gives us so much information. Like we were talking before, if you have sleep issues, tells us about your melatonin. It gives you everything you need. That way we can see what is going on, not just on the surface of where your hormones are at, but what's actually going on inside. It's kind of like the check engine light. I love my analogies, the check engine light, right? The check engine light comes on and you can't just be like, oh, I'll just throw some gas in. Well, yes, you can put some gas in your car, but you probably need to get that code that tells you exactly why the check engine light. So that's what the Dutch test is going to do when we start checking those hormones.
So how do I, just an average person, go get the Dutch test and all of that you're saying, so you can look at, so you'll know, but how do we get somebody that can give us that sort of readout no matter where we are?
Well, I'm going to plug myself. I'm that somebody that can give you the readout, baby. So with me, if you guys want to, I'm sure you'll have all the links. You can book a free discovery call. If you want to get the Dutch test, I can have it done for you. So I have a concierge total virtual practice. So you can be anywhere in the world. We'll send the test directly to you. You send the dried urine, dried, of course, over to the lab. They get me the results. So here's the thing. Sometimes people will order the Dutch test straight from the company. If you can do that, I'm not even sure if they do that any longer. Here's the thing. You're going to get about 14 pages of circles and arrows. And I'm telling you right now, unless you've had the proper training, it will mean nothing to you. It'll just be all godly goop. So you need someone to not just run the panel for you, but to give you the interpretation and create the plan. And so I do have a package where you can do the touch test with me. We do the interpretation. I bring on my medical team, my medical director. We break it all down. We give you a plan as far as nutrition and fitness and also supplement and lifestyle changes, because the Dutch test has a lot of information, but I'll be very honest. Like I said, once again, the interpretation is where you really need that support.
So I just want to say for the record that I just set you up so perfectly to give you a little plug and we didn't plan that out. But I think it's of value to people to know that want to pursue this further, that there is an opportunity there, because I've heard people talk about exactly what you said. We, went to the doctor, they ordered the standard, nothing comes back. And what do they really test for? So getting plugged into where you can get something a little more extensive and understand what that means to you, I think that's of a lot of value. So thanks for sharing that. So let's talk a little bit about, two things. I guess I'm going to skip ahead. I want to jump to gut health because you brought it up. And there's so much on the street and all these products about pre and probiotics, which I know very little about, but I know I'm interested, and I know a lot of the other folks in the community are interested too. Can you give us a super high level 101 on, what you would recommend in that space, how much they really have an impact on gut health, anything like that?
That's a great question, right? Once again, beginning of the year, we're all trying to get healthy. Now, I will say this, you may or may not like it, but bear with me here.
Yeah.
Just because we're talking about all these changes in January, I have to be honest, this has to become a lifestyle change. We cannot implement these tips for 6 weeks. And let's be honest, right? Valentine's comes along. You've stopped going to the gym. You stop your meal planning. You stopped walking. We need to make this a lifestyle change. So when we bring in probiotics and prebiotics, that's a really interesting one, because so many times there's so much going on in your gut as far as a gut dysbiosis. I don't recommend people just run out and do a prebiotic and a postbiotic, a probiotic, because we need to know what's going on with the landscape of your gut. For example, if you're always bloated, constipated, you're like, I have a sensitive stomach, and you're like, you know what, I'm going to eat some yogurt. Now that's fine, if you can tolerate dairy, but just bringing in some probiotics isn't going to really help your situation. And if you have those symptoms and you have small intestinal bacteria overgrowth, you're actually fueling the overgrowth by bringing in probiotics. So what I recommend is really making sure your gut health is on point and working with someone to see if you need probiotics. Now, obviously, if you have taken an antibiotic or you're trying to get your gut health going, that can be something where you can get a probiotic. I always recommend the probiotics that are refrigerated. So it's actually live cultures. And then the prebiotic is really like the fuel to feed that good bacteria. But once again, before jumping on a prebiotic or a probiotic, I would recommend you really see what's going on with your gut to make sure everything is balanced. Because if you do bring that in and there's imbalances, you could really be working against your healing journey.
And so is the first step on figuring out what's going on with your gut taking a hormonal test like the Dutch test, or is there something else that's really specifically focused on the gut?
Marianne, you're just hitting it, honey. There is definitely something else. Here we go with the something else.
Because I'm asking these questions and I'm like, is this a good question or is this a dumb question?
There is not a dumb question, number one. And number two, that is a great question. The GI map. The GI map, like it says, GI map. Now, let's be honest. Nobody wants to talk about poop, so I'm not going to turn this into like a podcast about poop. But what I am going to say is if you're not pooping 2 to 3 times a day, you are technically constipated and there could be some gut dysbiosis. Now, some of you are like, oh, I poop 2, 3 times a day, no big deal. But gut dysbiosis could be that brain fog, the pelvic pain, the joint pain, the itchy, the rashy, that person that conveniently gets a crazy little rash every time before their period. Or maybe you're premenopausal and it's like you have a period one day, you're not, one day you're great, one day you feel like you're crazy, the world is spinning, you don't know what's going on. Probably something going on with your gut health. So the GI map really is super simple. Once again, not the sexiest thing, but very simple. Would recommend it for everyone. I actually just did a GI map. So funny, we're talking about today, and I was going to talk about it a little bit on Instagram because everyone's like, I want to lose weight. I want to lose weight. Well, for me, doing the GI map pointed out those imbalances. Once I cleared up those imbalances, I'm down 18 pounds. I repeat, I haven't been dieting, haven't been going to the gym as regularly because I've been so busy with work, but really figuring out what's going on with your gut. So the GI map is my favorite. It really tells you if there's parasites, if there's anything. And actually, let me pause. So with the GI map, it is a stool sample. So I know many of you are like, oh, I can go to my regular doctor. Here's the thing. In conventional medicine, the levels have to be outrageous. I mean, you have to have like a plethora of parasites. You have to have a SIBO level that's outrageous. Functional testing, it grabs it at the smallest amount. So if you register on conventional, at that point, yeah, you're definitely critical code red. However, like for myself, I did the conventional test because I was like, might as well use my insurance. But then I also did the functional test. Nothing showed up on the conventional. They told me I didn't have parasites, no H. pylori, no nothing. I do the GI map. Yeah, your girl had some parasites because I was like, I was seeing something wasn't adding up. So I was like, yeah, I think there's a problem. I had parasites. I had H. pylori. And I was dealing with some candida and some yeast. So the GI map really just mapped that all out for me. Just like, I know, kind of a play on words, but it does. It maps everything out for you. That way, you know what's going on, if you've got some viruses, if you've got some pathogens. So it's really interesting too. I don't even know if this is a question, but I'm just going to roll it in because I feel like this would be a good thing to mention. Sometimes you're going to be like, okay, LJ, I don't have all the resources. I don't have the time for all of these tests. If I had to tell you which one to choose, I'm going to tell you right now, yes, I'm all about balancing your hormones naturally. I love the Dutch test, but if you're like, hey, if I could only do one test, where would I start? GI map. That's going to be the biggest bang for your buck. And this is why I say that. Think about a house, right? You can have all that great stuff inside, the granite countertops, all the fun appliances picked out. But if you're building a house on a foundation of cardboard, right, it is not going to work. What we want to do is lock and load that foundation, which is your gut health, because most of the time, and this is probably like a whole nother podcast, but most of the time when the gut is off balance, that's when the hormones start to go, the sex hormones, right? The weight gain, all the issues. So if we can clean up that foundation, not saying it's going to cure all your other issues, but if we tighten up that foundation, then when we start to support those hormones, and once again, I'll use myself as that example. Once I balanced those hormones, or once I took care of the gut, all of a sudden that estrogen dominance started to clear up because my gut wasn't as backed up. I wasn't as constipated. Like I told you before we start recording, I'm actually sleeping better. So once again, lots of different tests out there. Functional medicine, we've got a little bit of everything. But out of those two, if you had to choose just one, I would definitely start with the GI map.
So, and for this may be another plug, but just for the GI map, if somebody wants to go ahead and get that test, do they look for a functional medicinist? What's the word?
You're like, what would that be? Once again, you can come to me, baby. I got you covered. GI mapping is something I do as well. And for people that do the 3-month coaching with me or some of my bigger coaching packages, don't worry, I roll that all in. But if you want to just grab that a la carte, we can definitely do the GI map. Like I said, you do the stool sample, you send it in the kit, they get the results. We come on, we do a few calls and really create a plan. But it can be very, very eye-opening because sometimes when I look at your intake paperwork, people are like, I don't want to say I have this. I'm like, give me all the TMI, the more information, the better. But it's so amazing when we look at the paperwork and we look at all the symptoms and then I get the GI map back and I'm like, yeah, See this bacteria right here that's high? It's correlating to joint pain, right? See this bacteria right here that's super crazy? That's why you keep getting this streptococcus. You're getting strep all the time and these cold sores. Like, it will literally tell you, and it helps us really, once again, instead of chasing all these random symptoms, let's tighten up that foundation and then we can build from there.
So let's just pretend for a minute, this is a great problem to have, that you are so overwhelmed and you can't possibly take another person. Is functional medicine an area that people can just look out there? Keep wanting to say the yellow pages, which shows my age, but Google, you can find a functional medicine professional that would help with that. That's a thing. But then I think I hear you alluding to the fact that insurance doesn't pay for it. Is that accurate?
Correct. So most of your conventional, allopathic insurance, is not going to pay for functional medicine. Naturopaths sometimes, it depends. I know in my personal practice, I don't accept insurance. And the main reason why, because I get this asked all the time, because I don't want insurance throwing you through the ringer. For example, when you go to your doctor right now, and let's use period pain, pelvic pain, you've got to take a birth control. That didn't work. Now you got to take a few more. When they know good and well, you need to go straight to this. But the insurance wants you to jump through those hoops. I'm here to get you better. I need to get you straight to the money. I'm not going to take you through all of these rigmaroles when I know exactly what you need. I'm not going to, you've been through enough gaslighting and trauma. I'm trying to cut to the chase and get you some relief. So most of the time they don't accept insurance. However, if you have FSA or HSA, right, which I know you're kind of beginning of the year, you're racking that up, but we do accept that typically. And some do accept insurance, but most of the time, no. But you can always look online, like you said, the yellow pages, AKA Dr. Google, and you can look for an ND, a naturopath. You can look for functional medicine, dietitian. There's, I'm trying to think what else. There's functional medicine. There's integrative medicine. It's just really a new way of thinking things. I think before we just had our primary care.
Yeah.
And then if something was broken, we went to a specialist.
Yeah.
But now it's really like, what can we do to have optimal health? What can we do to not always be chasing another dis-ease symptom every single day?
I love that info. I mean, I would love it if they come to you and you're so passionate and so knowledgeable, but I also like sharing the information a little bit more globally because I don't think everybody knows about it, right? It's an up and coming kind of trend, I think. So that's
I know, right? Yeah. It's kind of like the whole, it's not as, I want to say it's not as worldwide. I think it's more accepted now. The stuff that we've kind of went through the last 3 years, we've kind of figured out, just run into the prescriptions and listening to whatever the media may be telling us may not be putting us in our driver's seat. So yes, absolutely. You can come to me, but you can look for a naturopath, integrative medicine, functional medicine. There are also people that are functional diagnostic nutrition practitioners. They can also help with that level of testing. And if you want someone local, always shoot me a message and I can push you out and, see if I can find someone that's local for you for a referral.
Love that. So let's switch gears for a second. So there's similar to when we were talking about pre and probiotics and sort of all the information and all the products out there. There's a lot of buzz right now about sugar. Sugar sensitivity, sugar addiction, sugar everything. And, there's some bandwagons that say just completely get off sugar, no sugar at all. And then there's others that will say, but you can't use the substitutes because they're really bad for you. So, so for those not seeing us, there was a slight eye roll there. So, which is, that's my school of thought is never an all or nothing. So I think we probably are going to be in alignment there. So give me your thoughts on, all of what's going on in that space. And then anything that you talk to, because I know you talk a little bit about some of the ways to reduce your sugar load. Hit me with some of that stuff so we can share that information.
I'm sharing the eye roll as well. So don't worry, guys. There were 2 eye rolls over here because I'm like, oh my gosh, I've been there. So I'm in the middle. Here's the thing. It's all about reducing the toxic load on your body. I'm going to kind of say sugar is a toxin, but that just, work with me on this one. So here's the thing. Yes, you can use regular sugar, processed sugar. This is the thing. When you bring in processed sugar, it turns off your immune system for 6 hours. So just think about it. If you're at a party, you're out and about, it's cold. I used to live in Denver. It's always cold. Someone always has the flu, strep throat, whatever. I needed my immune system to be turned on every single moment. I didn't have time for a break. Now others may use stevia, Splenda, sucralose or whatever these other things are. And that may be considered a toxin to their body. It's like tomato. You have to find what works for you. But the biggest thing I would say about sugar is being able to minimize the processed sugar. And this is what I will say. At the beginning of the year, you're like, okay, I'm going sugar-free. I want to lose some weight. I'm cutting this, I'm cutting that. There's nothing wrong with that. But once again, is that sustainable?
No.
Now, I'm not saying that, gorge on the sugar, but find that happy medium. And what I will also add to that is beware of things that say sugar-free. They're a little sneaky with that. They know exactly what to put on the front of that label, organic, fair trade, all of the fun words. They know what to say to us to get us to purchase it. But when you turn it over, what I want you to look at, because I know a lot of you are like, I got it covered, LJ. I'm sugar-free. I bought the sugar-free candy, this, that, and the other. If it ends in an OSE or an OL, for example, maltose, dextrose, maltol, dextrol, they came up with all of these corn fibers, all these fun little words. That is actually still a form of sugar. So you have to be aware that, I know it's hard to, it's easy to demonize sugar. Sugar is bad for you, but it really depends on how your body is able to optimize it. I know I've done some testing recently where my body does better on carbs. That was like a mind-blowing thing for me. I was just like, look here, because I've been like, carbs are the devil. I don't do carbs, yada, yada, yada. But when I did my metabolic testing, so that I could really start fine-tuning my nutrition, I needed the carbs. And so it's interesting. If I chose the right carbs, I wasn't gaining weight. If I chose the right carbs, I wasn't in the sugar coma. So first thing when you're looking at, minimizing your sugar, check the labels. Make sure you're not just doing sugar-free stuff, assuming that it's not going to have an impact on your blood sugar. The other thing I would say is assess how you feel after you eat. So for example, I used to create this awesome, I think it was like a cauliflower casserole or something like that. And so I'd eat it maybe like at 1:00. And then by 1:30, I could barely hold my eyes open, right? The cauliflower, the cheese, like all the goodness that I thought it was going to be. I was in a sugar coma by 1:30. I couldn't keep my eyes open. So what I started doing is, okay, I would eat it and then I'd check my blood sugar. And what would happen is my blood sugar would spike and then it would keep spiking over and over. Every 30 minutes, it kept jumping up. What you want ideally is if you eat something that your blood sugar spikes, you metabolize it and your body moves on and it comes down. But when you are in that sugar coma, and so simple things, when you eat something and you're exhausted, you can barely hold your eyes open, you've got brain fog, you're just like in a coma almost. That's letting you know that was too much sugar for your body. Now, what's too much sugar for me could be perfect for you, right? So you have to kind of be aware of your body and just have that awareness. And a lot of times it's challenging because it's the beginning of the year. You're trying to drink more water. You're trying to get in your 10,000 steps. You're trying to work out. You're trying to do this. And you're like, that's just another thing. So choose a couple things. Don't be overwhelmed. But when it comes to the sugar, it really is about minimizing the processed sugar and then really seeing how you feel, how you look, feel, and just, everything after you have processed the meal.
And when we say processed or added sugar, so there's definitely a difference to our body, just for everybody to be on the same page. When I eat 5 apples, which have a lot of sugar in them, natural sugar, right? I mean, It's different than, I don't know, some snack that has the equivalent added sugar, right?
5 Costco cookies versus 5 apples. Yeah. Let's think about it. Yes, that sugar is going to hit a little bit different. Yes.
Yeah. I think that people sometimes get hung up on that because they're like, well, there's sugar in this, but it's processed differently in the body. So I think it's worth pointing out. And then I think you talk a little bit about a role that weightlifting can have with helping in that space, right? So yes. I have folks that are, we're all working to create healthier lifestyles here, and definitely exercise is part of that. So the 2 questions I had around exercise were that, and then to ask you to talk a little bit about how you should think about changing up exercise patterns based on cycles.
Yes.
And I don't mean bike cycles. Yeah.
Yes. There's all kinds of cycles, but we're talking about cycle syncing, your menstrual cycle. Yeah. So we'll talk about that. And then I'll get that little caveat for perimenopause because newsflash, that's where I'm at. I'm in that perimenopause, not quite made it. Hopefully I'm not here. It could be 2 to 10 years. Yeah. I'm hoping we transition a lot quicker than the 10 years. I'm kind of over it already, but we'll see what happens. So yes, being able to optimize your cycle is so important. And this is the thing I want to really focus on is listen to your body. Most of the time, that you are feeling overwhelmed when you're doing certain workouts or when you are like, what, I just don't have the energy, but I'm going to still, do the level 55 on the Stairmaster. It's like, people. We have got to get past that. Health and wellness is more than, over exercising, under exercising, finding that happy medium. But when it comes to your cycle, your hormones fluctuate. So there are going to be times that you're revved up and you're excited and you're ready to hit that cardio or that Zumba class. And then there's going to be other times that, like right before your cycle, that's not the time to do all of that. So for week 1, I would recommend doing intervals, a little bit of cardio, a little bit of strength. The caveat to strength, just because I said strength exercises doesn't mean it has to be crazy weights. Strength could be wall sits. Strength could be bands. Strength could be 3-pound weights. It doesn't have to be, a body pump bar with 300 pounds on there where you're squatting. Like, that is not the only way to do strength exercise. Week 2, I would recommend doing more resistance training. Now that can be pushing and pulling. That can be, weights. That could be strength training. That could be plyometrics, something to really build that muscle because you're feeling that power. Now on week 3, that's the time to turn it up for the cardio queen. So if you love the aerobics and the running and the jogging and all that, kickboxing, which I'm a cardio junkie, I have to say, that is the week to really ramp up the cardio. And then when you go into week 4, we need to calm it down. That's yoga, Pilates. Maybe you don't work out at all. Maybe your body is really needing to rest. And so I'll add a link and I'll give it to you. If you want to turn your period into your superpower, I can give you guys a link for that and you can grab a freebie, because it really is important to know how to cycle sync and really, I don't want to say change your routine, but once you understand what works for your body, it can be very powerful as far as your workouts, as far as balancing your hormones, and also very validating, because there are going to be times where you're feeling tired and you're just like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this big presentation. And it's okay. Rather than beating yourself up and being like, oh my God, I just totally suck because I didn't want to do. It's like, no, you're in that part of your cycle where your hormones are not available for that. And that's why you feel that way. So it can be very validating once you get that information.
So I have 2 follow-up questions to that. Again, taking it down to the basics so everyone's on the same page. When you say week 1, is that the week after my period that starts the cycle again, right? So week 4 is when I do have my period. Is that right?
So that's a good question. So day 1 is day 1 of when you start bleeding. So that's day 1 of your cycle. So I guess I should have said that. Yes. Back to the basics. So day 1 through, 1 through 7, and then you have 7 through 14. So that's if you have a 28-day cycle. Everyone's cycle is a little bit different. Now, if you're in that perimenopause group with me where we're like, periods, yes, no, maybe, we'll see what happens. Strength training is the best thing to do. Not saying you have to leave all cardio, but if you start doing the cardio and you feel like a lot of inflammation, or let's say you do a workout at 9 a.m. and then by 11 a.m. you're exhausted and you can't function the rest of the day and it just zaps your battery, I would just recommend the strength training.
That was going to be my follow-up question, because a lot of this group is in that window of probably 45 plus. And so for some of us, the actual periods may have stopped, but some of us are still on the hormonal balance journey, where it's up and down. So there's still some cycling going on there. And then for others, we're probably past that. So that was going to be my follow-up question. So it sounds like leave some of the aerobics and some of that high impact stuff behind and start focusing more on the weight training, the balance, that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. The core, the balance, and the strength. We have to give ourselves grace and realize every day you're going to feel a little different. Just because, in your 20s and 30s, you went to the gym for an hour and a half, and now you can barely make it 20 minutes. That's okay, right? You don't need to beat yourself up. Maximize the 20 minutes. Get in that movement. Movement is what we need. May it be walking your dog, going to the gym, stretching, yoga, Pilates. Sometimes, it depends on where I'm at in my cycle. I just need to sit in the sauna and sweat. Like that's the workout for the day, right? I just need the pores to dump all the junk, to drink some water and keep it moving.
Yeah. Meet yourself where you need to, right? Just to keep it going. So this has been great. And I know we're up against the time. So before we close, a couple of things. I, of course, will put all your links and all the information and how to contact you in the show notes so everybody can get in touch and reach out where they want to. But I also want to give you an opportunity. Is there anything we didn't hit on that you want to just put out there? And if not, that's fine. I know we covered a lot, but I want to give you the opportunity in case there was anything.
I think we covered it all. The one thing I would say is no matter what your diagnosis is, you deserve help. It just may look a little different for everyone. So don't, compare your healing journey. I know many times when we're trying to balance our hormones and live a good life and lose weight and, be productive and have energy and get rid of brain fog, we compare ourselves, and you just have to realize that everyone's individualized, everyone is different, but you do deserve quality of life.
I love that. Thank you so much. I know this is going to be so well received, and I could probably keep talking to you for 2 hours, so we might have to plan another one, but this is great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Message in the Middle with Marianne. If you enjoyed the podcast, please take a minute to share it and write a review, as it helps bring new listeners to our audience. If you'd like to keep the conversation going between episodes, please join us at Facebook group Message in the Middle with Marianne.